Thank you for joining us today for the Employer Education Partnership Program. Today we have Christopher Jackson talking to you about how to survey an audience to better promote your company services and products. So I'm going to turn the time over to Christopher. We appreciate your attendance today.
Thank you, Angela. I'm super excited today to talk a little bit about surveying and the luxury of gathering information from an audience and applying it to your business or your communication strategy at large. So I have a few slides prepared for us today and some different activities that we can kind of use to critically think about what's the best practices of surveying. So the title of my presentation today is Surveying an Audience, and really we're going to look at critically examining what is the best practices and why we survey. So I wanted to open with a quote today, and this says that the one who knows, the one who never asks questions neither knows everything nor nothing. And my goal today is really to make sure that we know everything that we can possibly know, but also that we don't know nothing about our audience. So today, let's go into this kind of thinking critically about how we can gather information about who we want to know about in our company. So I want to propose a question. What are some ways that surveys best help a business? Maybe that's thinking about our customer onboarding, or maybe we need to launch a new product. How can we critically examine what is the best practices for moving forward in our businesses? And take a second and think about that, and then let's think about what we can do to apply this knowledge. All right, let's take a second and critically think with an exercise. So surveys in action. In order to critically think in as we go about this information session, let's think about the last two surveys that you took. Why did you take these surveys? Were you incentivized? What was the information that the company was trying to acquire from you? So take a second, think about those surveys and consider why you took them and what the company was trying to get from you. Off the top of my head, I can think about taking the Zaxby's survey. I think I was incentivized by getting a free meal, or sometimes companies do a free dessert, different appetizers. So sometimes we're lucky enough to be incentivized, but also why does the company want to know what we think? For Zaxby's, it could be the potential of understanding a sentiment of the customer experience, how well the brand is doing, what is a product that they could be potentially wanting to launch, how would it go over with a customer, or what's the future stakes of the company looking like from the stakeholders. So all of these are really great things to consider when you're thinking about surveying an audience at large. Let's talk about qualitative versus quantitative research as it has to do with surveying. So the type of research that there are two different types. One is qualitative and one is quantitative. And when we're thinking about qualitative, we're answering the question why. So this is kind of an observation or a symbol or words that we might gather from interviewing somebody. This is often non-statistical information. This is also gathered through interviews or focus groups, and these can be very helpful in understanding the sentiment or the feeling or emotions that are behind a stakeholder. And likewise, quantitative is a little bit different. It can answers the question how much, how many, and it's also more numerical and statistical in its approach to gathering information. This is often a measured test, and it's either answered in question form and usually consist of like maybe an email or an A, B, C, or D kind of answer. But these are the two types of ways that we can gather information, or both are very important considering what type of research you want to do, and what you're trying to acquire would be how you would use these differently. So I think this is a great example of the difference between quantitative and qualitative. So if you look here, we see that it appears that the help desk is relatively not used. and it says that only 4% of our students assess the help desk, and maybe we should get rid of it. But when we look at a qualitative approach to understanding the help desk, people are really, it was hard and had some issues with the website, but I felt ashamed and didn't want to ask for help. So understanding the sentiment behind the students better shows a depiction of what's really happening when you're trying to understand information about a subject. This figure also shows a little bit more about qualitative versus quantitative. On the quantitative side, we have email surveys, like I mentioned, also focus groups, A/B testing. Qualitative can also be some focus groups, and it also uses a little bit more of a way of asking about the feelings and the emotions associated instead of looking more so for a direct answer or a statistical answer. So this video is going to show us a little bit about 7 ways that are going to be most essential to designing a survey. So I hope this strategy kind of helps us when we're beginning a process of designing a survey.
When we're conducting a survey, we like to make sure we're asking questions that will collect accurate and useful information. But it isn't always obvious what makes a survey question a good survey question. Here are 7 tips that can help in developing good survey questions. 1. A good question is one where all respondents interpret the question in a consistent manner. That's not always easy to achieve. The question, "Have you ever been the victim of a serious crime?" might be interpreted differently by different people. Is getting your car stolen a serious crime? Probably. What about your bicycle? What about your skateboard? Make sure your questions are as clear and as specific as possible. 2. A good question is also one where people are willing to answer the question. If a survey asks about very personal things such as sexual behavior or drug use, you might find lots of people unwilling to answer such questions. If you need to ask personal questions, you need to craft those questions carefully and explain to the respondent why you need this information and assure them that you'll keep their responses confidential or even anonymous. 3. A good question is one that a respondent will answer truthfully. Let's take the following question as an example. Do you own a library card? Seems clear enough, and it doesn't seem too personal, but surprisingly, lots of respondents might say yes, even when they don't have a library card. Why is that? It's something called social desirability. Reading books, being well read, is socially desirable. So someone who never goes to the library might not want to admit that they don't have a library card for fear that they might be judged negatively. It might be better to ask the question this way. Some people get books from a library, others buy them from bookstores or online. Do you currently have a library card or not? That might sound a little awkward, but you're more likely to get a more truthful answer. 4. A good question is one that a respondent can actually answer. If you ask someone how much money they spend on groceries in an average month, you might be surprised how many people would say they weren't sure. Make sure people have the knowledge or information to answer your survey question. 5. Avoid double-barreled questions. These are questions that ask for a single answer to a question that really has 2 different parts. For example, let's say you are asked the following question. Do you believe the United States should spend more money on education and less money locking up non-violent criminals? That's a double-barreled question. Respondents who agree with one part but not the other will have trouble answering this question. You should break that question into 2 separate questions. 6. Avoid biased terms or wording. This is probably the hardest thing to do when writing questions. Should you use the term Obamacare or use the Affordable Care Act? Should you use the term welfare? Or should you say assistance to the poor? It isn't obvious which is the better terminology, but different terms will likely lead to different answers. Surveys will sometimes give one question to half the sample and a slightly different worded question to another half to see how respondents react to the different wording. 7. Pre-test your questions. This is the most important tip. You need to try out your questions on real people and then ask for feedback. Were they confused by a question? Did they answer in a way that surprised you? Pre-testing will help you find out if you have any problems with your questions. Of course, there is no such thing as a perfect survey question. Instead, our goal is to create questions that elicit meaningful responses. Surveys take time and money. We don't want to waste our time and the respondents' time asking bad questions. Following these 7 tips can help you craft clear and useful survey questions.
So I think that video gives us a good baseline of understanding the ways that we can develop a survey and employ it in our strategy with great for a great cause. So I think also there's some great opportunities with surveys. We can better understand behaviors in our workplace and about our customers. We can create a medium for discussion, and we can also gather feedback for improvements. One of the survey types that we use in my field of work is the Net Promoter Score. So we a lot of times ask a question and we ask our audience, how likely are you to promote our fiber internet? And we have promoters, passive, and detractors. So we take this together, our Net Promoter Score of promoters, the percent of the promoters, then we subtract the detractors. We look at this because we want everybody to have a positive or a promoting experience with our brand. So everybody that's a 9 or a 10 are promoters. And then there's passive, where they're enjoying their experience, but they're not promoting us to others. And then we have 6 through 0 are detractors from our score. So our goal is to get the passive to become promoters and our detractors to become passive and have a great experience with our brand. So this is a opportunity for surveying that's really beneficial to understanding how a sentiment or an analysis of how well your brand's doing and how well your stakeholders feel about the brand associated with the survey. So here are a few survey tools that I've seen and used in my field. So we have JotForm, which a lot of people are familiar with. Google Forms is a great free option if you're starting out and need a quick survey. SurveyMonkey is one that I use regularly, and I think it's a great place to start if you're trying to make an in-depth and a survey with different types of questions. MailChimp also has integration into email marketing where you can send out surveys. Calendly and Doodle both are examples of scheduling surveys, and then Constant Contact also has opportunities for surveying again. So while you're listening to this, take a quick second to come up with a question that can better help your company and the needs of the employees in the company. So take a second and critically think about what's at need. Do we need to better understand how to communicate with different departments? Are we about to launch a new product? How is this going to affect different departments? Take a second and think about this and maybe come up with which way is best. Do I need a focus group? Do I need A/B testing? Or maybe the best way is an email survey. Come up with this and be able to apply it to your strategy. So that's all I have today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about surveying. If you have any questions, feel free as always to reach out to me at my email and connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. Thank you for the Department of Continuing and Professional Studies and Angela Crisco for having me. I'll see you in the next lecture.